Glynis Barber shot to fame in the 80s as one half of the brilliant TV duo Dempsey and Makepeace, a hugely popular TV crime drama. She went on to marry her co-star Michael Brandon, and today, aged 70, Glynis is still shining on screen and stage, and as someone who's clearly aging well, she also shares her beauty and fitness tips, secrets and experience with followers on her YouTube and social media platforms. And I'm happy to say she joins me today to talk us through all the things she swears by, from clinical treatments to exercise, supplements and home skincare too. So get ready for Glynis. Glynis, it is such a pleasure to talk to you. I was a big fan of the wonderful Dempsey and Makepeace back in the day that you starred in. And if somebody had whispered in my ear as a teenager that I would be interviewing you today, I would be thrilled. So thank you so much for being here.
It's a pleasure, an absolute pleasure. I love to talk about this kind of thing. So here I am.
When I was watching the show, and I love the fact that you went on to marry your co-star Michael Brandon, so wonderful. But it was the icing on the cake for fans. But watching you, especially in my teenage years, I thought, my goodness, I mean, you're such a beautiful woman, one of life's great beauties. How did it feel to you though? Because sometimes the perception of the people watching is not what you actually feel about yourself. I mean, you were in the spotlight, presumably lots of people talking about the way you look. And how did that actually feel for you at the time? How did you feel about yourself?
I never felt that I looked that good. And, and especially even before, I did Dempsey and Makepeace in my late 20s and in my early 20s. I always, I had a very oily skin in my youth. When I went into my career in one of the busiest years I ever had, where I did like 3 series and 3 films, my skin was terrible. I had spots and I was absolutely mortified by it. So it was very hard for me to understand what everyone was saying about me. And it's certainly not how I felt inside now. I think that is very common with a lot of young people. And, I look back now. I mean, the spots seemed so bad to me at the time. When I look back now, I can't really see it in my skin. And I go, hey, I wasn't too bad. But it certainly didn't feel like that. I think that your self-confidence is an innate thing that comes from your experiences in life. And I didn't have a lot of confidence, and I never did. I have a lot more confidence now, from life experience and from realizing that we're basically all in it together and nobody really knows what they're doing. So that sort of gives me confidence.
Yes, I mean, it's amazing. That's why I asked you, because I thought, I bet my perception of her as a viewer would have been very different from her own perception, just having gone through, I'm in my 50s now, you go through the different stages of life and you realize that very few younger people actually feel that good about themselves.
Yes.
And it's something I'm going through with one of my sons at the moment who has spots, and he's such a beautiful looking guy and he can't get past those spots.
Spots are a tough one. No one likes spots.
No,
And
I
when you're
know.
younger, it's and I even know, and spots can continue all your life, with hormones. So a lot of women in their 40s and even 50s are going to get spots if, due to hormones. I mean, I've seen grown women break down and cry because of a single spot. It just seems to do something to our confidence. So yes, spots are a tough thing to deal with.
I do wonder though if that oily skin has served us well longer term though. I think oily skin actually helps your skin is better hydrated longer term, I think.
I think it was my saving grace because I grew up in Africa and I grew up just lying and baking in the sun. And you just put oil on. There was no SPF then, just oil. And I baked, and I had the kind of skin that could take the sun. So I would go very dark, and I burnt, and sometimes I remember my nose would peel. Probably moving to England when I was 18 probably saved me. And they say that the damage and the dangers that come from being in the sun, skin cancer and stuff, is all laid in your extreme youth. However, I did have incredibly oily skin, and I honestly do believe that that oily skin, which caused me spots and which caused me problems in my youth, has ended up being the thing that has actually preserved my skin. Now I wouldn't mind a little bit of oily skin. Now, there's no oil left. I wish I had a bit of oil, but yeah. So yes, I think. And funnily enough, my husband Michael, he had a very
Mm-hmm.
similar thing because he had a very oily skin. I don't think
Mm-hmm.
he got spots, but he always had a very oily skin, and he has aged very well, and his
Mm.
skin is amazing for his age.
Wow.
So I think between the two of us, we both had this oily skin, and I think it's ended up serving us quite well. So anyone
Yeah.
out there who has an oily skin or spots, just know this is going to end up being your superpower.
And this is what I tell my son. I say it's all going to work out for you. See, when you're in your 40s and 50s, you'll be glad of that oily skin. Um, I mean, working in showbiz with so much attention to the way you look and so on, as you aged, was there ever a point where you started to become concerned about your skin aging?
I feel quite defiant. So yes, I know there are expectations on
Mm,
people, um, but frankly, it's ridiculous. Especially as an actor, you should be able to play roles of all ages. But of course, we know it doesn't work out like that, and the writing is often not there. But I think the pressure I felt was probably more my own pressure.
mm,
Um, in that I think, it is a tricky process seeing the changes in yourself as you get older and the things that happen. But I think I'm a lot more sanguine about it than I thought I would be.
mhm,
Um, so yes, I think there's an adjustment as you get older, but I don't feel paranoid about it. And, my whole ethos on my website, Ageless, is that it's all about focusing on health because I
mm,
honestly believe that that's the most important thing any of us can have is our health. And I honestly do believe that a healthy person will exude energy and have nice skin and glow. And I think those are the things that make you seem youthful is actually all about energy. I think
mm,
that's the
totally
most
agree.
important thing when it comes to aging. It doesn't matter. I mean, I've seen people who are so facelifted, they almost look pickled, and and yet they still exude an older energy.
Mm.
There's a stiffness in their body, there's a stiffness in their mental thinking, there's an inflexibility about them. So it doesn't matter what you do, if you don't move and remain flexible both mentally and physically, you're going to seem older whether you have lines on your face or not.
Very, very good point. And I love the idea of agelessness, actually. I spoke to somebody else recently who is a man in his 70s, and he had a bit of a transformation in midlife and, is now the strongest he's ever been in his 70s. And he talks about agelessness as well. It's a lovely concept. I'd love to know your kind of key pillars of agelessness if we could work through those. So I'm going to start with your skin, your lovely skin. Am I right in thinking you've not had cosmetic surgery? Sorry to ask these days, but
I've not had any cosmetic surgery. I take care of myself, and I try out treatments, and everything I've tried out is on my YouTube channel.
hmm
So no, I don't do anything like that. I don't have any fillers or anything like that. Not that I'm against or
hmm
judging. And if I thought a filler would actually help something, I would do it.
yeah,
I don't want to look odd. I don't want to look distorted. Um, I'm a big believer in radio frequency treatments. And I was
interesting.
talking to a plastic surgeon who does all these treatments recently, and this is what my philosophy is. I've recently tried some microneedling, which
hmm
I really love radio frequency. And I did try some of the polynucleotides, the salmon sperm.
Yes.
I did some around my eyes, and yes, it was nice. Would I do it again? I'm not sure.
So
And
maybe with the salmon sperm, people say, it kind of fills out the lines a little bit, maybe makes
yes,
the under eyes less dark.
it was nice, but I found it a little bit uncomfortable in the eye area. So, so what I think is that by doing little treatments, you don't get a wow result. You don't go, oh, wow, I look completely different. I look transformed. That isn't what happens. You get a very gentle, subtle change. But I think by doing things like microneedling and doing things like radio frequency, what you're doing is you're slowing down the overall aging process in your skin because you're stimulating collagen, you're strengthening the skin, and it makes incremental differences. But I think that's a lot more powerful than doing more extreme things, which then will fade over time. So you're what you're doing is you're just slowing down that whole process of aging, and you're helping to maintain your skin, and it's extremely subtle, um, which I think is nice. So that's how I like to roll with things, is just doing fairly gentle things, nothing that's going to give you downtime, or if it does, maybe for a day you'll have a little bit of redness. As I said, I always concentrate on what's going on inside my body, my health, and, exercising and lifestyle. And very, very, very important is stress management.
Now, there's my downfall.
Yes, and which is why I know it's important,
Mm.
because, stress is a tough one, and we live in a very stressful world right now.
Yeah. I know a lot of people will be wondering about the radio frequency treatments. I mean, I've heard pros and cons for those treatments. Some people are more concerned that they might affect facial fat and so on, but it seems to be that the devices and the treatments these days are getting a little bit more sophisticated, and provided you go to a good and highly experienced practitioner, a lot of people say they get great results through treatments like the ones you've had. I wonder, are there specific treatments that you rate? Do you know how you get different devices and so on? And how
Yes,
often have you had the radio
well,
frequency
you
treatments?
know what? I went through a stage where I did it quite often.
Hmm.
I've been so busy the last few years that I don't have nearly as much time to do these
Yeah.
things as you would think. I did one called Fracturaforma, which I did at
Hmm.
the Harley Street Skin Clinic, and I love that. It's very gentle. There is one in particular that they were concerned it would it would reduce the fat in your face, but I don't think that was like a regular. What was that? Was that wasn't Sculptura, was it? Sculptra.
Yeah, these are the injection Sculptra, but I think it's more, I don't hear about it so much from viewers, whereas it was something I heard quite a lot about. Maybe say 6, 7 years ago, I was getting quite a lot of viewers commenting that they'd had trouble with those treatments, and I hear it less and less, which gives me reason to think that this is less of an issue. What I do hear more and more is positive comments about it.
I would be very surprised in something like Faturaforma, and there are various ones like that, but they are actually very gentle
Yes.
and and relaxing. It's like a relax. You just feel this warmness on your face, and So I used to do like a little, a little, 3 or 4 twice a year. I
Right.
I
Okay. And
actually
did you see a difference? What kind of did you see a lift in the face? What do you think you saw from those treatments?
minimal, minimal.
Hmm. Yeah.
But in doing it over a number of years, my skin aged at a slower rate. So that's
Interesting.
what I'm saying is you don't go, oh wow, I look pulled,
Yeah.
I'm this or that. That
Yeah.
isn't what happens. It's subtle and it's gentle, but it's accumulative, and it's about maintaining your skin.
And what about skincare at home? Do you use things like retinoids, or do you take a very gentle approach?
Yes, and because I have Ageless, I am trying out products all the time. So what happened with me with skincare is a long time ago in the late 1980s, I became completely organic and I started eating organically ahead of other people doing it. People laughed at me. And then I got to the mid 90s and I thought, well, if I'm eating organically, I should put organic things on my face as
Mm.
well. So I started looking for organic skincare products, which was very hard then because there weren't many. And my skin actually suffered for a while, but I stuck with it for quite a long time. And now, of course, there are many, organic skincare brands, and I still love natural organic skincare. However, as you get older, you need energetic, effective products. And it wasn't quite doing it for me. My skin needed more help.
Hmm.
So the three things that I think you need in a mature skin is you need a retinol, you need peptides in your skin products, and you need alpha hydroxy acids. So those are three of the most efficacious products. Now, I never used to be able to tolerate retinols. I had a terrible reaction and couldn't use them for years. But the new generation of retinoids are much more gentle. And I think just about everyone can tolerate them. I can tolerate them. So, I mean, I don't use it every night. I try to, but I end up using it about twice a week, and I only use it in winter.
Oh,
Yeah, I only use
because of
it
sun
because
sensitivity.
sensitivity. And I know they say
Hmm.
it's fine, just use your SPF. And I do use an SPF in the summer, but I thought, why risk it? Why risk it?
Hmm.
So I don't use it in the summer, especially if I'm going to be in the sun. No, I don't. I just don't think it's necessary. So I
Hmm.
concentrate in the winter. And there is actually a lovely natural product called Bakuchiol.
Oh, yes.
That is like a natural version of a retinol. It does very similar things, but it doesn't have any of the side effects. It's gentle on your skin. You don't have any reaction, and it doesn't give you sun sensitivity. So if you want to keep up that good work of retinol, you can use Bakuchiol.
That's a nice idea. And then the alpha hydroxy acid, how often do you use that?
Also, like a couple of times a week. And
Hmm.
I've written a lot about that actually, because, there are PHAs, AHAs, and
Hmm.
you know, that I am able to tolerate. So, glycolic acid is great. And acid sounds, oh my God, it's going to strip your
Yeah.
skin. It's actually, because I used to love a physical exfoliator, especially in my
Mm.
youth when I
Hmm.
had spots. I'd try and rub them off with an exfoliator. And, the AHAs are so much more gentle because there's no rubbing off. It just gently removes dead skin cells, improves your your cell turnover, clears your skin, so it's great. A lot of people can't tolerate glycolic acid. There's one called azelaic acid,
Hmm.
which is lovely. It's for all kinds of skin, and it's much more gentle. Most people, even the most sensitive people, can take that. And if you're super, super sensitive, I would recommend a PHA, which is the new generation of exfoliating acids and is even more gentle and is actually perfect for a sensitive skin or skin prone to redness or rosacea or people with blemishes actually because it'll regulate your oil activity.
Mm. The
And
acids I never quite got into along the way. I do use a retinoid. I use something called retinal. Um,
yes,
like you, not every single day, because I find it can be quite drying if you're using it every single day. But that has been, centerpiece, I would
yes.
say.
I use such a gentle one, and I really should probably up it and use it, at least 4 times a week. Um, but yes, that's probably retinols are the most effective thing you can use on your
Yes,
skin. And I would
yes.
say second is AHAs, and then third are peptides, which they say is one of the most effective ingredients you can get in skincare in a mature skin that will actually affect the quality of your skin. So yeah.
Okay, good tips there. You mentioned your organic diet. Now, are you entirely plant-based,
No, not
omnivore? What's your approach?
Well, I haven't eaten red meat in decades for the
Mm-hmm.
simple reason that I don't like it. I sort of wish I did because I'm of the school of thought that it's actually very good for you and
Mm.
it's a wonderful protein. I do eat chicken and fish and I eat a lot of eggs. So I could have easily been a vegetarian. I was sort of heading that way. But then, I realized how important animal products are.
Mm.
And I know there are a lot of vegans and vegetarians out there
Mhm.
who may not agree. But I also believe in, it's where the animals come from. How have they been reared? Battery farming and cruelty. But there
Yeah.
are different ways of rearing animals and looking after them, and that's the kind of meat I would want to eat. And if I did like red meat, I would eat it because it is very healthful. And probably I've been told by people I've interviewed on my channel, and I'm talking about PhDs in nutrition, scientists, doctors, probably, the healthiest food on the planet is liver, which is
Mm.
my pet hate. That's actually why I gave up red meat, because as a child I was forced to eat liver and I hated it with a passion. And I eat it, but nothing is going to be more nutritious than that.
So you're kind of prioritizing protein in there, and it sounds like you're getting plenty of fiber and other good
Yes,
stuff through
I
your.
eat a lot of eggs, organic eggs, a lot of
Mm,
organic eggs. Yes.
yeah, yeah, that's good stuff. And exercise. I know that you have spoken about this being the fountain of youth. I certainly believe muscle is the fountain of youth. I mean, what do you do in the average day or average week?
When I started my website, I always used to say that exercise is the closest thing there is to an anti-aging pill. And I mean, I've always been a naturally active person. So because I know some people struggle to be active or to go to the gym or whatever,
Mhm.
but it actually doesn't matter what exercise you do. And I always say to people, don't forget that walking is the one of the most wonderful exercises, and especially walking in nature. So, with my schedule and my life, which is very busy, I'm a great believer in listening to my body. And sometimes I'll be away filming and I'm away from home a lot, and I'll get home and I go, "Ugh, okay, I have time to exercise." And I just feel so depleted. So, what I do is I take my dog and I
Mhm.
go to the park and I have a wonderful walk with my dog. Being with my dog makes me happy. Being in
Mhm.
nature is good for you, and walking is wonderful. And it's knowing your body and doing the exercise that feels good. It's obviously, as you get older, it's so important to stretch because we become very inflexible. So things like yoga are so good. I have recently started Pilates, uh,
Mhm.
which I love. And the reason I started it is because I now have some aches and pains in some of my joints. And actually, I was beginning to struggle a bit with, especially in my hands. My hands become
Okay.
painful. And I was having problems like in the downward dog and putting weight. So,
Mhm.
and my knees, I have dodgy knees. But no matter what happens to me, I never stop exercising because I will adapt. And if I can't do anything but walk, I will just walk.
Yeah.
And I started Pilates actually to try and build up my knees. And I have to say, at first I was thinking, oh, I don't know if I'm getting this. I'm just not feeling any difference. And then suddenly, after about 4 months, I went, going up and down the stairs is so much easier than it was before.
Yeah.
So I am feeling a difference. So yeah, and there's no strain. I mean, I can't get over the fact that most of Pilates you spend lying on your back. I've never had my back
That's
before.
the best part.
Can this possibly be right? But it's still very challenging. So yeah, it doesn't matter what you do. And of course, as you said, um, you know, it is the fountain of youth because our muscles as we get older are so
Mm.
important, as we all know. And so it's very important to do some strength training and it's hard. It's hard work to keep your muscles going. To just maintain what you have at 40 becomes
Yes.
very hard.
Yes.
And I was just thinking, because I do it and I do weights at least 2 or 3 times a week. Um, but I can see a difference in my muscles. So I was just thinking earlier today, I think I'm going to have to up my game. And because I used to go to the gym all the time. And since the pandemic, I changed that.
Mm.
I work out mostly from home now. And I've got a set of weights at home and I do YouTube workouts. But I was thinking, maybe I do need a trainer who's going to really push me and build a bit
Yeah.
of muscle. So,
Just so you're maybe adding some weight. I mean, I think the movement now is towards progressive weight training so that you are just gradually adding a little bit more weight as you go. And
Yeah,
sometimes if we've got kettlebells and so on at home, that's a brilliant start. But it's then how do you get heavier from that
yeah,
point,
yeah,
which a trainer can help with, or a gym or something like that. But it
yeah,
does sound like you've got a really good mix in there. And like you, I have a dog and get out with him every day, come rain or shine, and it's an absolute salvation. It's there for your mental health. Once you actually get out and walk, everything feels better.
yeah.
And dogs are just, of course, a complete and utter blessing.
I know. Dogs are just the best thing, and they
Yeah.
de-stressing. Just spending time with your dog, playing, stroking your dog is probably the most stress relieving thing there is.
So that's your magic mix. I have a specific question. This is something that I'm going to be doing a separate episode on. Because I have a theory that all the people, men and women, that I have interviewed on this channel that do weight bearing exercise and, prioritize exercise, work out, as they age, I notice they have tighter jawlines than the average person.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I've noticed that anecdotally over the years. I've sat and looked and thought, you're in your 70s and look, you've got this tight jawline. Where does that come from? You haven't had surgery. I mean, do you think, you've got this free for 70 years old, usually you would expect a little bit more sagging and
Well,
that
it's
kind of
not, it's
thing.
not
And yeah,
as tight as it
it's,
used to be.
do you think that, having some more muscle, the more muscle in your neck, do you think it's helpful?
Well, I don't know if I have got more muscle in my neck. My body composition is I'm not a very muscly person. It,
Mm-hmm.
it's very, I've got some friends who just look at the gym and they have a great set of pecs. I just don't have that body composition. I'm sort of longer, leaner muscles, and it's hard for me to build muscle. So I don't
Yeah.
know. I do think weight has got something to do with it, actually,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because, we get excess weight under our chins
Yes. Yeah.
and on our faces. And so I do think staying on top of weight, and I'm not advocating being unbelievably thin or dieting all the time. What I'm advocating is, as we get older, and especially for women, as we become menopausal, it becomes very easy to put on weight.
Yeah.
And you can't eat as you used to eat. You have to be mindful of eating good quality things. I mean, I I actually eat quite a lot. I never starve myself, and I cheat a lot, and I like sugar, but for the most part, I eat healthily.
Yeah.
And I think that makes a difference. So I think when people get very jowly or have excess here, that I think it tends to be when you put on a bit of weight.
Yeah. It seems to be a mix of things really as well.
Whenever you see an athlete or a former athlete, and they can be in their 60s or 70s, athletes tend to age very well, don't they?
Yeah.
Because they usually will keep up their exercise and they're very fit. And look at Torval and Dean. I mean, they look fantastic.
There seems to be something. I mean, there's science. There's a considerable body of science now that does show that exercise improves your skin quality. Collagen production, just having more muscle.
Exercise is just ticking so many boxes. So it is very, very important. But I always think when it comes to aging, and this is something I've always said on my website as well, is that there's no one thing. And I see it as a toolbox. And the
Mm,
toolbox has got exercise, it's got diet, lifestyle, stress management, and then skin treatments. And then, even within the skin treatments, as I said, it's a collection of tools. So, if you do a little bit of this and a little bit of that, the overall effect is going to slow down the aging process. And the overall effect is going to serve you rather than one thing that's going to go, oh, okay, that's
yeah,
that. And
yeah.
all these things, like taking supplements, and all these things added together are going to give you a result. And all these things are going to make you healthier, because at the core of it all is health.
Supplements and HRT, if I could lump those two together. I mean, what do you do?
I do bioidentical hormones.
Mm.
So, and I think I was one of the first people in England to do it. So because I've always sought out holistic sort of doctors.
Hmm. Hmm.
I've always been into preventative, and there was a holistic doctor, and she said, and she said, I think you're perimenopausal, and you can get this cream from Germany. It didn't exist in England. And she said, I'm going to get you some progesterone cream, and I think it's going to help your perimenopausal symptoms. So that's when I began. Nobody else was doing it.
Mm.
And then I lived in Los Angeles for a little while, and there was a doctor there who was prescribing it. And then when I came back to England, a few years later, it sort of became a thing here. So yes,
Yeah.
I was a very early proponent of bioidentical hormones, which haven't been going for that long. It is different to regular HRT because my understanding is that some of the dangers of HRT, some of the possible side effects and dangers, actually it ends up being more protective in bioidentical. However, I don't think we know everything because it's so new.
I interviewed a hormone specialist recently, somebody who sort of specializes in hormone replacement therapy, just to talk us through what was the difference between bioidentical and regular HRT. And she explained that actually the hormones themselves
Yeah,
are exactly the same as those that are prescribed, the kind of new age, modern HRT hormones that are prescribed to most of us. But what is different is that they can combine them into a cream, and it is bespoke to your what your doctor through
that's the
testing
important
would
thing.
consider your needs. So that is interesting. I mean, on the downside, there is less testing. So the amounts that are being used in those creams haven't, and the ingredients that are going into the creams haven't been as well tested as the ones that we get prescribed through, well, what we would call general practitioners in this country, the kind of mainstream medicine. But I've heard a lot of positives. I've had a lot of women on the channel now who are ambassadors of aging well, and in my view, like you, who are using bioidentical hormones. It keeps coming up and up and up. So certainly something I'm interested in. I'm somebody who uses HRT, but I can only use it in very small amounts because the estrogen patches, they just, they make me feel a bit unwell. So I
Yeah.
have wondered about bioidentical
So
now.
once again, I'm really trying to listen to my body. And I mean, it's nice to be on a bit of estrogen because, that also helps to keep your skin youthful. And if you look at the skin of someone who didn't go on any form of HRT, their skin is going to look very different as they age.
Mm,
Very, very different. So it is actually astounding. So the vain part of me doesn't want to come off it for that
doesn't want
reason.
to let it go. Yeah, yeah.
However, what has happened to me in the last, I would say, 4 years is I seem less able to tolerate the estrogen in the BHRT.
Mm,
And
mm-hmm.
I get little side effects. So to me, that's my body saying that it doesn't want it. So I was having the little lozenges that you put on your gum.
Mm-hmm.
I don't do that anymore. So because I didn't want to get a reaction, I use the cream. And to be honest, it's such a low dose. I don't even know how much of it is absorbing. It's almost like I'm not on it now. I'm on such low levels. But that's what my body is telling me. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I might even come off it. I did have to come off it because when I was on the lozenges and I came off it, I was off it for the good part of, like, I don't know, I can't remember, 6 months or a year. And weirdly, I did notice a difference in my skin.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
I
It's a smart approach, listening to your body.
if it's just a coincidence
Mm,
or if it was because of that, it's hard to know.
yeah. Yeah.
But I
It's an
think it's so
interesting one.
because our bodies know what they need, and if it doesn't want something, it's
Hmm.
going to tell you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. Follow the clues.
Yeah.
How about supplements? What do you take?
I take a lot of supplements. I vary them. I mean, the triumvirate is magnesium, D3, and K2. So those are the
Hmm.
things that I think just about everybody should be on.
Glynis, that has been so helpful. I think a lot of people will think that you are coming from a good common sense place there, and very similar to my own approach. Thank you so much for making time for me today.
It's an absolute pleasure.
So a huge thank you to Glynis for sharing her experience and approach to aging with us, which is clearly working so well for her. I've linked to her YouTube and Instagram accounts and website in the description below, so definitely check those out. And if you want to keep up with all the latest from me, don't forget to sign up to my newsletter using the link that you'll find below too. You'll also find here and in the description my recent conversation with menopause specialist Dr. Liz Andrew, who explained the differences and similarities between what's become known as bioidentical hormone therapy versus regular hormone therapy. But for now, thanks so much for being here today.